It's late, so I'm going to do late night philosophy, and I'm going to read something again. I don't know if some of you find that boring or not, because I haven't had much um, pushback on it, but at the same time, I haven't heard very much feedback, positive or negative. So I'm going to try this again. And again, I always try to emphasize that my particular background in philosophy is in analytic philosophy or contemporary analytic philosophy, particularly Anglo American centric thought. So uh, most of the stuff I've talked about has been like historical stuff. But the thing is about analytic philosophy, it tends to focus on the contemporary issues, not so much historical philosophical issues. So there's a heavy appreciation of scientific thought as well as logical or conceptual analysis and talking about contemporary issues. So I want to read something today, which is, although it's kind of old, it's still like somewhat contemporary. Um, 30 years ago is still contemporary philosophy, um, believe it or not. So I'm going to read something by a former professor from my alma mater. Yes, another former professor from my alma mater. And if people are like, why you keep reading stuff from professors from your alma mater? Well, because we had a really good philosophy program. That's why. That's the short answer. A lot of the people who've taught in that department are very well recognized within the the philosophy community. Sorry, I couldn't get that out. Pause. Um, but I'm going to read something by Raymond Martin, who's one of the co-authors of this book that I've been reading from the last week or so. The Experience of Philosophy, Sixth Edition by Daniel Kolak and Raymond Martin. So this selection is actually going to be from Raymond Martin. And again, he used to teach at my alma mater. Um, he's currently, I think he still teaches at another school, but he's up there in age now, so he might be a professor emeritus now. I'm not even sure. Let me switch my chat filter here so I can get all my stuff. And so again, I want to read something from contemporary philosophy because all the stuff I've talked about, even though some of it is contemporary issues, like when I talk about um, issues dealing with uh, when I've talked about stuff dealing with ethics or the mind or stuff like that, that is contemporary. But I want to get into like some of the some of the meat of contemporary philosophy, and I think this one will kind of be a little bit interesting. It's actually about meaning, about it actually deals with the philosophical issue of meaning or like meaning of life, but not in a way in which you've probably heard it before. It's not as dry as you may have heard it discussed before. First, let me get some water because I already know that I'm going to need it. Uh, I did a late night run and I know I'm going to need this water. My voice is already cracking. So there will be many water breaks. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to get through this whole paper. If not, I'll continue it maybe tomorrow. But I'll continue as long as I'm not too tired. So I hope that's fair. So it's again this paper by Dr. Raymond Martin is about meaning. Okay, and so again, all this goes to Raymond Martin. This is his words. I'm reading verbatim. I will interject here and there, but I'm going to pretty much read verbatim his words, Dr. Raymond Martin's words. What's up, Howard? What's going on, man? So here we go. And like I said, I'll try to get through it as much as this as possible. And you guys can ask me questions if it's germane to this. If people ask me random questions about all sorts of irrelevant things, I'm just gonna ignore it. But if you ask me something about this, I will answer it. Okay. So the so this again, this is about philosophy of meaning, meaning of life, stuff like that. And you're gonna like the title. If you haven't saw it already in the when you clicked on this live stream, it's called A Fast Car and a Good Woman. Not what you would expect from philosophy, right? This is contemporary philosophy. This is not that dry stuff you think of when you watch TV. They have people talking about philosophy from the 1700s. This is from 1993. And I think it was originally written in 1989, but pretty it's still pretty contemporary in as far as philosophy is concerned. All right, so it's called A Fast Car and a Good Woman by Dr. Raymond Martin. Here we go. Poverty, sickness, loneliness, alienation, feelings of inferiority, and the inability to give and receive love. Such problems can challenge the meaning of our lives. There's no puzzle about why. When we are afflicted with them, we suffer. If our suffering is bad enough and seemingly intractable, we may lose the sense that our lives are worth living. Such problems are practically, but not philosophically challenging. When they cause suffering that is avoidable, the important question is how to avoid it. When they cause suffering that is inevitable, the question is how to accept it. Learning how to avoid suffering when we can and accept it when we must are not part of the problem of the meaning of life. They are part of the problem of life. So he's already setting it up, okay? All right. Death also challenges the meaning of our lives, but in the case of death, unlike in the cases of the other problems mentioned, it is not clear why. What does the fact that our lives will come to an end have to do with whether they are worth living? There seems to be no connection. I, saw, I shall suggest a partial answer. The problem of the meaning of life is the philosophical question of how, if at all, our lives can be worth living. It concerns, for instance, such speculative questions as whether there is an overriding purpose or pattern for human life as a whole that confers meaning on our individual lives and whether there is an objective source of value for our lives. The problem of life, on the other hand, is the practical question of how to live our lives so that they are as worth living as they can be. Clearly, the problem of life is more important. You see the distinction he's making, right? In fact, it can seem so much more important that it is a tenet of practical wisdom that if we take proper care of our lives, questions of meaning will take care of themselves. That's good advice unless you are the sort of person who has to address questions of meaning to take proper care of your life. Not everyone does, and even among those who do, questions of meaning will seem more important at some times as than at others. So he's here we go. Tolstoy is the classic example of someone for whom questions of meaning can be urgent. He's talking about Leo Tolstoy, guys. Um, if you haven't read anything about Leo Tolstoy, go ahead and do yourself a favor and go check out one of Tolstoy's many great novels. So, so Tolstoy is the classic example of someone for whom questions of meaning can be urgent. I was overcome by minutes at first of perplexity, and then of an arrest of life, as though I did not know how to live or what to do. And I lost myself and was dejected. But that passed, and I continued to live as before. Then those minutes of perplexity were repeated oftener and oftener, and always in one and the same form. These arrests of life found their expression in ever the same questions. Why? Well, and then? As first, I thought these were simply aimless, inappropriate questions, but they began to repeat themselves oftener and oftener. Answers were demanded more and more persistently, and like dots that fall on the same spot, these questions without any answers thickened into one black blotch. When I was absolutely unable to make any reply, the questions were not waiting, and I had to answer them at once. If I did not answer them, I could not live. That was He was quoting Tolstoy there. Empathizing with Tolstoy's existential anguish can unravel our familiar everyday rationalizations and expose a secret need for understanding we keep buried deep within. Stripped of our pretensions, we look freshly at our own lives and at the lives of those around us, at the lives of everyone who has ever lived, and we ask, why? There is no answer, just a silent, anxious echo of our question and sometimes a nagging doubt. There is something fishy about existential anguish, even when it comes wrapped in a paper of respectable philosophical questioning. It often smells suspiciously like a rationalization of unmentioned problems. Tolstoy, for instance, portrays himself as one who would be happy except for worries about the meaning of life. But is it really worries about the meaning of life that keep dragging him down? There are questions he can ask about the meaning of his life, doubts to be raised, but questions and doubts can be raised about anything. Questions are not necessarily problems. They can be. We can make a psychological problem out of almost anything. Tell me about it. But how often are philosophical questions genuine psychological problems? When it seems that our philosophical questions give rise to existential anguish, should we marvel at the depth of our insight or suspect self deception? Water break. Hydrate, guys, hydrate. So, there is one familiar way philosophy can give rise to psychological problems. The naive person whose sense of security is built on a foundation of unquestioned beliefs can have those beliefs suddenly swept out from under him or her by philosophical questioning. Consider, for instance, a person whose sense of security rests on religious beliefs that suddenly become subject to doubt. The resulting turmoil can be so painfully confusing as to call into question the meaning of life. Without minimizing this sort of problem, I wish to set it aside. The philosophical questioning which induces it usually directly challenges only the beliefs we depend on for security, not the meaning of our lives per se. The suffering comes not from insoluble philosophical problem, but from the sudden realization that our personal ideologies rest on dubious assumptions. Most people get over this realization quickly enough, usually too quickly, either by forgetting or ignoring their doubts, or else by finding a new basis for security. I am asking whether there is a deeper and more direct philosophical challenge to the meaning of our lives, which is at least as psychologically valid as the one that depends on philosophical naivete, yet is not so easily set aside or outgrown. Hmm. In sum, I have distinguished three challenges to the meaning of our lives: bad times, death, and, and philosophical doubts of a sort that can arise even when our lives are going quite well. My concern now is with the third of these challenges, putting aside problems caused by the realization that our personal ideologies rest on dubious assumptions. I am asking whether challenges of this third sort, that is, philosophical doubts about the meaning of our lives that can arise even when our lives are going quite well, are psychologically genuine. I don't deny that when our lives are going quite well, psychological problems can arise. I'm asking how likely is it that philosophical questions are the explanation? I admit that they may sometimes be the explanation. I'm asking whether there isn't usually some deeper explanation, a source of anxiety and despair we may not be facing if we allow ourselves to be preoccupied with philosophy. That's that's pretty good. That's a pretty good question. Don't worry, guys. I'm keep going, and it'll if you're not exactly understanding what he's saying, he he's building up to it. He's cooking, as folks like to say. He's cooking. All right. Thomas Nagel sets aside as unphilosophical those challenges to the meaning of life that arise because things go wrong and are quote contemptible, are compatible with the possibility of meaning had things gone differently, unquote. Philosophical challenges to meaning, in his view, threaten human life with quote unquote objective meaninglessness, even when it is quote unquote at its subjective best. And he seems to think that philosophical challenges to meaning are a chronic source of deep psychological problems. Guys, can we say first world problems here? I and I'm not trying to be dismissive because this is my I love this sort of stuff, but I can easily admit that you have to be pretty privileged to be worrying about existential anguish and those of a philosophical sort when other people are worrying about other things. But don't worry, he he answers all of this sort of stuff. Let me go on, okay? Um, so and he seems to think he's talking about Thomas Nagel. He seems to think that philosophical challenges to meaning are a chronic source of deep psychological problems, and he quotes Nagel here. In seeing ourselves from outside, we find it difficult to take our lives seriously. This loss of conviction and the attempt to regain it is the problem of the meaning of life. It is a genuine problem which we cannot ignore. The capacity for transcendence brings with it a liability to alienation. Yet we can't abandon the external standpoint because it is our own. Okay. Howard Clegg says live life easy. So anyway, so Martin goes on to say, so it is our own, Nagel says, because the objective self is such a vital part of us that to, quote, ignore its quasi independent operation is to be cut off from oneself as much as if one were to abandon one's subjective individuality, unquote. So, in Nagel's view, there is no escape from this sort of alienation, no credible way of eliminating the inner conflict, quote unquote, and hence no solution to the philosophical problem of the meaning of life. But there is help, Nagel thinks, and it comes from two sources. So again, he's quoting Nagel directly here. Morality permits the objective assertion of subjective values to the extent that it is compatible with the corresponding claims of others. It involves occupying a position far enough outside your own life to reduce the importance of the difference between yourself and other people, yet not so far outside that all human values vanish in a nihilistic blackout. Humility falls between nihilistic detachment and blind self importance. The human race has a strong disposition to adore itself, in spite of its record. But it is possible to live a complete life of the kind one has been given without overvaluing it hopelessly. Water. So, so um, Raymond continues right here. Even so, Nagel thinks that the quote gap is too wide to be closed entirely for anyone who is fully human, unquote. So, although morality and humility help, the problem is insoluble. Serious internal conflict remains, and some Nagel agrees with Tolstoy, though for different reasons, that philosophical challenges to the meaning of life are an important source of psychological problems. If Nagel and Tolstoy are right, practical wisdom is wrong. Questions of meaning do not take care of themselves. If you are intellectually sensitive, then to take proper care of your life, you have to attend to questions about meaning. Tolstoy's self portrait seems to show that these questions can bring you down. Nagel's view is that if you think honestly and correctly about questions of meaning, they will bring you down. Tolstoy solved this problem by embracing Christianity. Nagel claims there is no honest solution. Nagel's analysis of the philosophical issues is elegant, yet his account, like Tolstoy's, is psychologically suspect. And I agree. I agree with that. Anyway, so to see why, think about a time when your life was at its subjective best. So think, all right, guys. So think about that. Like, you know how some people peaked in high school. You like Al Bundy. You score 4 touchdowns senior year to Dorsey High. So that was when life was subjectively at Al Bundy's best, right? He scored the winning touchdowns for Dorsey. What was it? What was it? Polk High, Dorsey? I can't remember because I always get it confused with the guy from Poetic Justice, the gay guy at the beauty salon. But you know, Al Bundy talks about that, or like some of us, you know, we may have peaked in high school, or some of us were absolute like geeks in high school, and we didn't peak. We peaked in college, or maybe in grad school, right? I, I'm probably gonna say I peaked, and I, I peaked sometime in college, but hopefully, or well, I don't know. You guess maybe I peaked in college in a way, or I could say subjectively, at his best was when I was traveling about 7 years ago, and met my wife. Maybe that was when life was subjectively at its best for me, but I still think I have a lot of great moments to go, and I may not have reached my best yet, but as so far, yes. So again, think of some people who peaked in high school, or some people who may have peaked in college, or some people who peaked when they were in the army, or whatever. That's what he's talking about when he's mentioning um, when he's mentioned a time when your life was at its subjective best. Anyway, let me continue. Okay, sorry. Maybe you were young and had just fallen deeply in love with someone who had just fallen deeply in love with you. Perhaps you were in the throes of sexual ecstasy or enveloped in mystical bliss. Or you may have played some instrument or danced or acted or written much better than you ever thought you could. Perhaps you were simply drawn out of yourself by the muted texture of an autumn day or the vibrant sting of cold rain against your face. Whatever your peak experiences, were you worried then about the meaning of life? Did questions about meaning bother you? That is, were they problems for you? Of course not. If your life really was at its subjective best, then probably it was sufficient. You lacked nothing because you had solved the problem of life, at least temporarily. Questions about the meaning of life did not even arise. If such questions had been raised, you would have regarded them as an entertainment or more likely dismissed them as irrelevant. Perhaps then practical wisdom is right after all. How to live well is the only psychologically valid issue. When we are happy, questions about the meaning of life rarely ever become problems. The solution to the problem of the meaning of life then is simple: be happy. Bobby, so I guess Bobby McFerrin had it right all along. Don't worry, be happy now. Do, 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 do. You know that. I know I'm showing my age. Sorry, but it, if you know the song, it is actually pretty apropos to what I've said here. So let me finish speaking. So the really important question is how. Life is too short to try out many paths to happiness. We have to take our chances, and we have to take some of our most important chances when we are young and relatively inexperienced. Through ignorance or bad luck, people often choose the wrong paths to happiness and as a consequence suffer. Such bad choices are obviously an important source of suffering, particularly for people and circumstances sufficiently advantaged that they have the luxury of choice. But the fact that people make bad choices about how to be happy does not in and of itself give rise to philosophical problems about the meaning of our lives. Like Nagel, Richard Taylor locates philosophical questions about the meaning of our lives and the tension between objective meaninglessness, for him, quote unquote, endless pointlessness, and subjective meaning. His view is that our lives are objectively meaningless, but not meaningless per se. You know, I made this point back in college as an undergrad, and people tried to tell me and people said I was making a circular argument. I was like, no, I'm not. And the funny thing is, I hadn't even read this paper back then, and I had made this similar point that this philosopher Richard Taylor has made. When I said that although life is meaningless, I said people's individual lives can be meaningful. And when I said that, people was like, "But that's a circular argument." I was like, "No, it's not." But they were undergrads too, so they didn't get the nuance of what I was saying. But I'm glad that I'm not alone in thinking that. Makes me think I wasn't as stupid as I thought I was. So his view, he's talking about Richard Taylor here. His view is that our lives are objectively meaningless, but not meaningless per se. And he goes to quote him directly here. At this point, then, we can reintroduce our own wills, our deep interest in what we find ourselves doing. If we do this, we find that our lives do indeed still resemble that of Sisyphus, but the strange meaningfulness that they possess is that of the inner compulsion to be doing just what we were put here to do and to go on doing it forever. So if you don't get the thing about Sisyphus, Sisyphus was the titan that was, sentenced to, roll the boulder up the mountain just for it to come down. And he had to keep doing it until the end of time. That was his punishment. So, anyway, so in other words, the tasks people set for themselves, the things to which, and goes to quote Taylor directly again here, they bent their backs day after day, realizing one by one their ephemeral plans were precisely the things in which their wills were deeply involved, precisely the things in which their interests lay. There was no need then to ask questions. There is no more need of them now. The day was sufficient to itself, and so was the life. This is surely the way to look at all of life. So, in Taylor's view, subjective meaningfulness resides in activity in which our wills are involved. And again, one of my professors sort of made a similar point. The professor whom I've talked about many times before, Dr. Jack Odell, who passed away a few years ago during the pandemic, he also gave a defense of a meaningfulness to our lives. And I've mentioned this before in previous videos. His thought was that although life itself is meaningless, people's individual lives can be meaningful if they they do if they have a they live a life of rich experiences, like, you know, you travel the world, you earn a, you earn a, a graduate degree, you go, you go, you attend a symphony concert, you have children, you you win a Nobel Prize, these sorts of things. And so I see sort of a similarity, excuse me, a similarity in some in what maybe Richard Taylor is saying to what Dr. Jack Odell said, and again, uh, one of my own philosophical intuitions, which was that we all kind of agree that life itself is meaningless, but individual lives can be more or less meaningful by the things that people do or don't do. So he goes to quote Taylor again here directly. A human being no sooner draws his first breath than he responds to the will that is in him to live. He no more asks whether it will be worthwhile or worth anything of significance will come of it than the worms and the birds. The point of his life is his nature to be living. What counts is that one should be able to begin a new task, a new puzzle, a new bubble. It counts only because it is there to be done. He has the will to do it. The meaning of life is from within us. It is not bestowed from without, and it far exceeds in both its beauty and permanence any human which men have ever dreamed or yearned for. Taylor's view in sum is that the value derived from activity in which our wills are involved is enough to sustain the meaning of our lives. Indeed, is as much as we can rationally help hope for. Is it? Looking around, we see people willfully building their castles and bubbles, so to speak, just as Taylor says they do, but not as meaningfully as he claims. Surely Thoreau, he's talking about Henry David Thoreau. If you guys don't know who that is, you're a bad American. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But obviously, that's someone from American history we should learn if we had a good American history course back in high school or middle school, both college, whatever. So so he says surely Thoreau was not all wrong when he observed that most people live in quiet desperation. Taylor finds meaning everywhere. Nagel finds it nowhere. The saccharine sweetness of Taylor's conclusion makes Nagel's pessimism look appealing, but neither account feels psychologically valid. Taylor's is too romantic and makes meaning too easy. Nagel's is too intellectual and makes meaning too hard. It is worth exploring the middle ground. A plausible view suggested by Taylor's discussion is that people have meaningful lives not when they are doing what they will to do, but when they are doing what they love to do. So again, getting back to what I was saying about Dr. Jack Odell's talking about meaningfulness through rich experiences. I don't think he put it as rich experiences. I'm just putting that in my own words. Um, Such a view seems to leave a place for meaningful excuse me, a place for meaningfulness without romanticizing human life. For most people are not doing what they love to do, but rather what they have to do or what they feel they have to do. Tell me about it, right? How many of us do what we love to do? I mean, if you love being an accountant, kudos. If you love working at Walmart, kudos. But most of us don't love doing that shit. Um, I mean, like I said, like I've said before, and I know I'm running on a tangent here. I really doubt any porn star, male porn star. I can't talk about female porn stars. I don't know that. I doubt any male porn star gets up on a Monday morning like, oh God, I gotta go to work. I'm just saying. I don't. I'm pretty sure uh, Jack Napier or uh, who's still in the business now because a lot of them quit or died or something. um, I don't know the names of these some of these new guys. Blackzilla or whatever. There's one named Blackzilla. I'm pretty sure Blackzilla and Jack Napier don't get up like, oh God, Monday. Oh, it's a Monday. I gotta go bang out Lana Rhodes. I don't feel like doing that today, man. I know she quit. I'm just using her as an example. I know she quit and got married. Kudos to whoever the simp was that married a woman with like 1,500 bodies on her. Whatever. But yeah, I it, clearly they're doing something they love to do. Clearly, you know what I'm saying. Or if you know if you're a theoretical physicist, I'm pretty sure you love that shit. Like I'm pretty sure you wake up with equations in the head. Um, you know, if you're a champion MMA fighter, like, well, actually that might be a bad example. You might hate getting up 5 in the morning to go do your runs or whatever, but you might love it. You might love it. Going to the gym every morning and afternoon. But again, most his point is salient. Like most people do what they have to do, not what they love to do, or at least what they feel they have to do. Right? I mean, I don't know. There could be some drug kingpin out there too. Like, man, I love selling this J.A.C. Does nothing give me more satisfaction than running these drugs all the way from Colombia to Toronto. I love running this yayo, this fentanyl. I don't know. Maybe there's some top kingpins out there that just get get aroused by the thought of that their drugs are flooding the entire Western Hemisphere. I don't know. But let me get back to my point. Let me get back to this paper here because I know you guys like. All right, he's tripping, and I am because it's late. But Um, the human spectacle is not a scene of yeoman farmers toiling happily in their fields. It includes a fair proportion of tired, unhappy people resigned to their painful, dreary lives, trying desperately to distract and anesthetize themselves. Meaning, then, on this criterion, is neither impossible nor inevitable, nor is it all or nothing. It is a matter of degree. Is the answer then not that your life is or is not inherently meaningful, but rather that it can be meaningful and is meaningful largely to the degree that you are doing what you love to do? That seems a more likely hypothesis than the ones already considered, yet, in its implicit suggestion that the main problem of meaning is the practical problem of finding out what you love to do and then doing it, this view too may be hopelessly romantic. Obviously, there's a lot of people who know what they would love to do, but they still can't do it, right? For either practical reasons or just whatever. Again, a lot of people might want to be in Jack Napier's place and know they about to, you know, they about to do uh, BBC Pie episode 2000, whatever. But anyway, let me continue. Oscar Wilde once remarked that there are only two problems in life: not getting what you want and getting it. If Wilde is right, then what many people think is the whole problem, not getting what you want or doing what you want to do, is really only part of the problem. Ironically, the rest of the problem is what these same people think is the solution. It is hard to quarrel with that much of Wilde's observation. Getting what you want can be problematic. Wilde's remark also suggests, however, that getting what you want not only can be, but will be problematic. If that's true, then our lives are an insoluble problem. It is easy to see how not getting what you want can be a problem, obviously. right? And if you want the wrong things, say the pleasures of an unhealthy lifestyle, it's also easy to see how getting what you want can be a problem. But what if you want the right things, things that are not only good in themselves, but also good for you? How could wanting the right things be a problem? Think back to those times when your life was at its subjective best. Granted, at those moments, you were not bothered by questions about the meaning of life, but were you completely satisfied? That's a loaded question. How could you ever know that you couldn't have been even more satisfied? So, as far as you could tell, then, were you completely satisfied? Probably you were. If you were, then it must be possible to be happy, to be so happy that, so far as you can tell, you have all of your unsatisfied wants driven out of you, at least all of them that detract from your happiness. That may or may not be complete satisfaction, but it's close enough for most of us. And we sometimes get it in and of itself. It's a solution, not a problem. But it inevitably leads to a problem. The real problem, it doesn't last. Now we getting somewhere, right? Of course, I'm pretty sure he's gonna get into it. But obviously, if a moment of happiness lasted, it would cease to be known. It would be it would cease to be something you can identify with happiness if it was just a permanent state of of affairs for you psychologically. Like, the reason we recognize happiness is because it doesn't last. I'm not trying to be deep here or anything like that. I don't need you snapping your fingers like, ooh. I'm just saying that's just a I think just a pretty sensical point, right? Like, the reason why we recognize why we were so happy in a given moment or during some state of affairs that that we experience is because it doesn't last. If it did last, I don't know if we would still identify it with it being happiness. But Mullet, can you? I think that guy's a troll. He asked the same fucking question every same time. Anyway, back to this. Yeah, he might be that troll Mullet. I'm not sure, but he if not, he's borderline retarded because he literally asks the same question every time he appears. So thanks. So life is a tease. It promises more lasting satisfactions than it delivers, no matter how good it gets. Eventually, we always find ourselves wanting more. If we lose what we, if we lose what was satisfying us completely, we want it back. If we keep it, we want more of it, or else we want something else. And we will want it in a way that detracts from our happiness. That's a psychological truth that you can bet the farm on. Whatever you think is going to satisfy you completely, it is not going to satisfy you completely for long. That's what she said. But it may for a while if you are clever. You may even distract yourself from noticing that the itch of unsatisfied desire has returned. But if you look closely, you will see that what you wanted, what you may have thought would be enough, what you were sure would satisfy you completely, does not really do it. Again, that's what she said. So, but most of us have the dubious luxury of thinking that we would be happy if only we had something we cannot have, or we were doing something we cannot do. Our deprivation nourishes the illusion that complete satisfaction that lasts is attainable if only the external circumstances of our lives were better. Tolstoy did not have the luxury of that illusion. He had everything he wanted: wealth, fame, a loving family, and was doing what he wanted to do. Yet still he wasn't satisfied. He had so much that he couldn't imagine what more he wanted, unless perhaps it was answers. So he embraced answers. And then, so he would have us believe he was happy. That is his story. That it was lack of answers that brought him down in the first place, and that it was his subsequent conviction that he had answers, his quote unquote irrational knowledge that made everything right again. He's talking about Leo Tolstoy's turn to Christianity, to his Christian faith. Okay. Perhaps, but another possibility is that Tolstoy's lack of answers was at most a symptom of the problem, not the real problem. Since he had everything and was doing what he wanted to be doing, then what could his real problem have been? It could have been simply that even with everything, Tolstoy's life did not stay at its subjective best. Satisfied, he could not stay satisfied. The problem could have been that Tolstoy wanted his life to be at a subjective best, but not could not keep it there. So when he came down, as inevitably he did, he wanted more, even though, as we say, he had everything. In other words, the problem could have been simply that while life allowed him to taste complete satisfaction, it didn't last. Sort of like a drug high, guys. You know, people always I've heard people say, and no, I have not done it, so don't ask me. But people have always said the first time someone gets that high in heroin, they can never achieve that same high again. That like it's a um, apparently there's a certain satisfaction that people get when they first use heroin, and that their their addiction after the afterwards has always been them trying to chase that same initial uh, high that they got the first time they used it, which they can never ever achieve again. Allegedly, I don't know if that's true or not. So back to the essay. So if not getting what you want or not doing what you want to do won't satisfy you completely, and getting what you want or doing what you want to do won't satisfy you completely either, it's worth thinking briefly about the extreme alternative. Don't want. That's the essence of the Buddha Gautama's contribution to solving the problem of life. And it's also the Jedi. Pap, can we hear echoes of that Jedi here? You know, I don't want to start quoting Star Wars here, but this is what leads you to the path of the dark side. When you want more, and when you get more, you want to hold on to it. You don't want anyone to take it from you, and you covet it. And when you covet it, you're scared that people will take things away from you. So you act out in anger and hatred that people will take these things from you, and you know this leads you to the dark side. Attachments. This is what Buddha talked about, and this is something that went into Jediism. And yes, Jediism is a real religion now, but even in the fictional, world, um, it was people's attachments to things, to people, that led them to want to covet these things and have them, and be fearful of people taking them away from them, which made them angry, which leads to the dark side. Speaking of which, Kathleen Kennedy is quitting Lucasfilm. Ding dong, which is dead. it's like it's like Frodo and Frodo made it all the way to Mordor and threw the one ring into the lava. But hopefully they'll have someone better replace her. Dave Filoni is not a good replacement for her. He's just as bad. John Favreau would be a better. But anyway, putting it aside, let me get back to this essay. So that's the essence of Buddha Gautama's contribution to solving the problem of life. It may or may not be the right solution. We don't really have to decide. For even if it is the right solution, it is Buddha's solution, not ours. We may give lip service to that solution, but few of us really see it as a realistic option for ourselves. Which again, which is why a lot of fan fiction started talking about the so-called gray Jedi who go between both the light and the dark, which is just bullshit. But let me not fanboy out right here. I'm gonna finish this essay. But I get why people thought the Gray Jedi would be a more rational alternative. But in the fictional world of George Lucas, it doesn't make sense, even if pragmatically to us it does. Anyway, for even if it is the right solution, it's the Buddhist solution, not ours. We may give lip service to that solution, but few of us really see it as a realistic option for ourselves. If we did, we'd be off somewhere, perhaps meditating in a monastery in Burma, not taking college courses. Well, the wifey just went to Burma recently, and I will be. I was supposed to interview her about it last week, but it was my fault. I went out to work out late, and she went to go eat lunch, and we messed that. I messed that up. So hopefully she can do it this weekend. And she also is going to show us some videos of her whole Indochina trip. So for folks that don't know, she did a whole Indochina trip, including Burma, and she visited some of those temples in Burma. There's apparently hundreds of them, despite all the warfare going on there. Anyway, we we may say we're on the quote unquote path, and we may be the path of the Jedi. No, she didn't ditch me. It, it was always a this was something before she and I even got together 7 years ago. No, no, he's good, Moonlit. He's been on here before. um, he but thanks for looking out. But no, Black Bear's actually all right. But no, the wife didn't ditch me, guys. She's been wanting to do a solo trip to Indochina before we even met, eight um like 8 years ago. Um, it that was like one of her dream. That was like that was like number one on her bucket list was was to do an Indochina trip solo because she likes to be a backpack traveler. So that was one of her biggest dreams to do backpack traveling across Indochina. And I'm talking about like in all of Indochina. At first, she wasn't even going to do Burma, aka Myanmar. But I encouraged her to do it when she told me that there had been because originally I was telling her too, yeah, don't go to Burma, that they're still mired in civil war. But when I found out there's been a bunch of other Filipino tourists and others going there, I was like, oh, it's safe. Plus, we found out there's tour guides, so she got to not just go to Yangon, which I think is the capital. She actually got to go to Bagan, where all the temples are. Um, so she went. I think she first landed in Laos. She went Laos. I think she went from Laos to Vietnam to Thailand to Burma, back to Thailand, then to Cambodia, then back to Vietnam. And like she was in different cities, and each time she went like so. When she was in Thailand the first time, she was in Bangkok, then went to Burma and went to Yangon, and then to Bagan in Burma. Came back to Thailand, went to Ayutthaya. Am I saying that right, Moonlit? Is it I always say it wrong. Is it Ayutthaya or Ayutthaya? I always mispronounce it. Um, when she was in Laos, she was in I forgot the name of that city. But then she went. When she went to Vietnam, she was in Hanoi. Then in Cambodia, she was in Phnom Penh, and she got to go to the Angkor Wat temples. Oh, I did say it right, Ayutthaya. Thank you. And then from Phnom Penh and the Angkor Wat um, area, She went back to Vietnam, but this time she went to Ho Chi Minh City, aka Saigon, and she finally got some pho. She never had pho before. There, which interestingly, there's a region in the Philippines where there was some Vietnamese that migrated there, and they made a pho dish that combines both Filipino and Vietnamese elements. So I'm definitely getting that when I go back. But she's never had like real pho until she got the real pho. Like I get pho here in the states because there's like a Vietnamese pho noodle shop like everywhere in Maryland. Like you can't go anywhere in Maryland without finding a pho shop. And they're all named after the roads. It'll be like pho one, pho two, pho three, pho four, pho five. Or, like they're all just numbers like pho five, whatever, and they're all delicious by the way. Even though they have all their names are completely like basic as fuck, but um, she got to me. It's authentic when you eat it in its actual country. So like pad thai, I, I'm spoiled. Like eating pad thai in Thailand, I don't care for it here as much anymore. Even though the first time I had it was there though. So or I still eat ramen here. I still eat instant ramen, but I haven't gone anywhere to get like real ramen because like when you eat ramen in Japan, like it's like all right, or eating any Filipino food. Like when I had like adobo or pansa canton or beef caldereta or lumpia, and I'm making myself fucking hungry. Let me stop. All right, let me get back to this essay, guys. I'm sorry for the diversion, and it's almost over. But I just want you guys to get a taste of what contemporary philosophy is actually like. It's not as dry as 18th century philosophy, which is very long winded. Contemporary philosophy again is known for for being clear, cogent, and concise. Clear in that it's not gonna sound obscure, except for maybe like the philosophical jargon with which you might not be acquainted unless you are someone who does philosophy or study philosophy. But other than that, it should be pretty clear, right? Clear reading. Cogent meaning it has like these people are expected to make rational arguments, whereas some in the past, particularly non-Western philosophers, again, will write things that are either obscure or they will write things that aren't rational but are supposed to lead to a certain philosophical insight, like in Zen, and like again like Zen Buddhism, Chan Buddhism. The the they don't write things. Well, there's not many. Well, there's not a large literature in Zen Buddhism anyway, to the extent there is in other Eastern philosophies or Western philosophy. But the stuff that is there are clearly not rational arguments. And then the last point is conciseness. You're not going to have whole paragraphs that are just one goddamn sentence like you do in 18th century philosophy. um, Long-winded, like it's gonna be have us you're gonna feel the brevity in contemporary philosophy. 19th century philosophy is the worst though. I'm just gonna say like we literally refer to it as the dark ages of philosophy and Western philosophy. But anyway, let me get back to what I was saying and finish this essay for you guys. Sorry if I'm running a tangent here. But even on the path, we still spend most of our waking time trying to get what we want, except that on the path, in addition to all of the usual wants, security, sex, love, power, glory, we now have an unusual want, not wanting. The path is crowded with spiritual materialists. We're back to a realistic pessimism. The answer to the problem of the meaning of life may simply be that we're stuck with a life of fleeting satisfactions and unsatisfied desires. Whatever the value of morality and humility, they are precious little help in solving this problem. Doing what you love to do is a great help, probably the most important contribution you can make to the meaningfulness of your life. Ironically, doing what you love to do may even be a critical part of the most important contribution you can make to the lives of those around you. Even so, at least this side of enlightenment, there may be no fully satisfying solution to the problem of life. Hey, Blackbeard, did you hear my response to you, by the way, when you were asking, did she ditch me? And I was saying she didn't. That was just her, a dream of hers to do a do a solo, to backpack, to do a backpack traveling solo through Indochina. Like that was something on her list, so she made it happen. So I was just happy to be able to let her do that, and I told her, I was like, because she did ask me if I wanted to go with her, and I was like, no, I want this to be your thing. This is what you always wanted to do. So have fun, be safe. And I was like, do that, and then the next time when I said we'll go back together and do it, because the way I travel isn't the way she likes to travel. She wants to be a backpack traveler. I'm not a backpack traveler. I like comfort, and I want to be in a. I don't really do the hostels, although some hostels can be okay. But I told her I don't like hostels because of that horror movie that came out, like 20 years ago. And ever since that movie came out, I thought that all hostels were places where they take advantage of poor of poor college kids and they murder them and stuff like that. But I know that's not real. That's just a horror movie. But I haven't liked horror. I mean, I haven't liked hostels ever since that horror movie came out. That was a brutal movie. Um, But I told her when we go back, we can spend, like, she wants to spend more time in like some of the places she visited briefly, like spend more time in Burma if it's safe. Plus, I want to go there because I want to take Lethway. Lethway is similar to Muay Thai, but they fight bare knuckled and they headbutt. So that's Lethway. So I told her I want to go to a Lethway gym next time I go back. It's closed because of the wars. um, and then spend more time in Vietnam. Vietnam is great, and for the people, if you think Thailand and the Philippines is cheap, Vietnam is like, hold my beer. Like their currency is called the dong. Pause, but that is the name, and it's like its value is like 0.00000001 of a US dollar, something like that. Like it's crazy. So you can live comfortably as an expat in Vietnam. You just don't question the politics of the country. So yeah, we're definitely going back there, and I definitely want to go to Angkor Wat because there's so many movies filmed at the Angkor Wat Temple in Phnom Penh. Like Tomb Raider and stuff like that. She actually took a picture of her at the very tree where Laura Croft was in the movie. I should probably put it on my post. Anyway, let me finish this. So doing what you love to do is a great help, probably the most important contribution you can make to the meaningfulness of your life. Ironically, doing what you love to do may even be a critical part of the most important contribution you can make to the lives of those around you. Even so, at least this side of enlightenment, there may be no fully satisfying solution to the problem of life. What's up, Kat? Since satisfaction doesn't last, then either we have to continually resatisfy ourselves, that's what she said, or successfully and pleasantly distract ourselves from the fact that we haven't. That seems to be our fate. And if we're reasonably good at these two tasks, it's not such a bad fate. But neither is it a fully satisfying solution to the problem of life. In other words, what I am suggesting is that the root psychological problem, the one that keeps arising even when our lives are going quite well, may simply be that we cannot satisfy ourselves completely for long. Again, that's what she said. So that is why even among people whose lives are going quite well, almost everyone is chronically unsatisfied. Acknowledging that this is the problem can bring us down from our philosophical heights. Back on Earth, we can redirect our energies towards solving the problem of life. To do that, we follow our individual recipes for happiness: a fast car and a good woman, or whatever you think it will do for you. For me, Muay, give me some Muay Thai and a good woman, but close enough. The acknowledgement that there is no fully satisfying solution to the problem of life can quash our hopes that we will ever get the complete and lasting satisfaction we crave. That is one of the deepest and most emotionally significant hopes we have. True, that hope may never have survived rational scrutiny anyway, but that doesn't stop us from secretly nourishing it. It comes to a profound disappointment to finally admit, not just verbally, but completely, that whether we get what we want or not, we will never stay satisfied for long. And I think there might be I mean, I've heard people say that there might be an evolutionary basis for this, that that's constant need for doing something, to, you know, that we're always constantly unsatisfied, is what leads, is what causes, is what steers human progress. Because if we're not, if we're never like content and with what we have, we can keep pushing forward for better. So I've heard that argument made before, either on an evolutionary basis or on a social basis, for human progress, is that that constant dissatisfaction with how things are lead us to keep doing more and more. Just right now, we NASA is about to drop some Starlink satellites to to increase the efficiency of our internet. So, I mean, we could have stopped in the '60s when we went to space and said, we're good enough here. Keep going. Anyway, um, it comes as a profound disappointment to finally admit, not just verbally, but completely, that whether we get what we want or not, we will never stay satisfied for long. And then there is death. Death has always been a puzzle for philosophers, not what it is, but while we have some of the attitudes toward it, we do. For present purposes, we can ignore most of the famous enigmas. Our question is this: why does death threaten the meaning of our lives? Surely part of that answer is the familiar observation that we fear we may vanish without leaving a significant trace, that our lives will not have a positive difference. But of course, that should not be a problem for people such as Tolstoy, whose lives have gone as well as possible and hence who have made a positive difference. There must be more than that to the challenge to meaning that death poses. The analysis just given suggests part of the answer. Death threatens the meaningfulness of our lives, partly because it ends our struggle for satisfaction. Because death kills us, the prospect that death is near kills the unspoken and irrational hope that if we only had a little more time, we might satisfy our need for psychological closure for complete satisfaction. If we have already given up that hope, we will fear death less. We may even welcome it as a merciful release from a struggle we cannot help throwing ourselves into, even though we know we shall never win it. That's a bit zen, is it? That sounds a bit zen, doesn't it? In any case, death challenges the meaningfulness of our lives, partly because the prospect that death is near makes it painfully obvious that we will lose the struggle for satisfaction. Death is a major symbol of defeat. Return once again to those moments when your life was at its subjective best. You know, when you was in that Asian massage parlor with the with four women at one time. And stop, I'm, I'm playing. But those moments brought complete satisfaction, and complete satisfaction is a kind of victory over death. A person, for instance, can be so much in love, so deeply satisfied, she feels that she could die and it wouldn't matter. That's because she's getting that black Zilla. But anyway, When our experience gets that good, we have won the battle of satisfaction, and death holds no terror. The problem is that our victory is only temporary. Death is a persistent foe, and desire its ally. Satisfied, we cannot stay satisfied. The itch of desire returns, the struggle resumes, until death ends the struggle, perhaps forever. Um, that's the end, guys. That's the end of the essay. So, um, from the book that Raymond Martin was quoting from Leo Tolstoy is called My Confession. Um, the stuff he was quoting from Thomas Nagel was from his essay called The Absurd. Um, and when I was talking about Richard Taylor, when Raymond Martin was talking about Richard Taylor, he was quoting from his book The Good and the Evil, called Good and Evil. And of course, when he was talking about Buddhism and stuff like that, and talking about spiritual materialism. That comes from uh, someone I'm probably gonna butcher this name, Chagam Trungpa, um, in a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Mona says like genetically handed down. If you're talking about what I was mentioning when I was saying uh, the satisfaction that we sort of have a certain drive. Um, when I it's, it, I'm saying it's part of the human condition. Like, not that it's like something passed down from family member to family member. I'm saying this when I was suggesting that this could be an evolutionary uh, tool. I was saying maybe what that certain drive we have is also the drive we have comes from a recurring state of dissatisfaction with our current state of affairs, and that is what leads to human progress. Um, but it doesn't have to be evolution. A it doesn't have to be uh, a necessarily psychological evolution. It could be social. This could be just social evolution as well, which is non Darwinian. Psychological evolution is Darwinian. So is part of is explained through Darwinian selection. Social evolution isn't. Those are other mechanisms. So I'm just speculating there. Like I said, I've heard arguments to that notion that our dissatisfaction is what leads us to keep doing better and better things, or worse. But that's it, guys. That is this uh, paper, and it's again it's called A Fast Car and a Good Woman by Raymond Martin, a previous philosophy professor at my alma mater. So that's it. And with that being said, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna eat a late night snack and take my butt to bed because it is 1:49 is absolutely late. Cat, what can you watch it on replay? It's only an hour long. Thanks, Blackbeard. Appreciate it, brother. Sorry again about the confusion. Moonlit's just looking out for me because he knows that I've had I had a stalker problem recently, so that's why he's looking out for me. Good night, Kat. Thanks guys for coming in. Anyone watching this on replay, if you want to show your support, you can sign up for a membership or you can drop me a super thanks. Um, as well, I do have links in my description for people who have a few drachmas in their pocket. um, you can cash. I have a cash app in that link, and I'll have the buy me a coffee link there as well. Um, or for everyone else, just give me a like and a subscribe. That'll help me a lot. And share the video. Sharing the video, liking, subscribing helps me a lot. Helps me grow this channel. Um, I'm already at a little over 2,000 people. So again, I'm hoping to grow this by 10,000. And that's it. Thanks, guys, for listening to my little nerdy chat here. By the way, this this will be under my category called nerdy stuff, and everything in nerdy stuff is now in a podcast. So if you can just listen to it now if you want. It's available as a podcast. Not all of this channel, but just the nerdy stuff. That all is available as a podcast because most of that stuff is me just talking. So it makes that great for a podcast. So anyway, thanks guys. Have a good night and or a good day.